I'm more worried about next year than I am this year at this point. I'm looking for the things that are a part of next season more than I am this current one. And it would be one thing if it were, guys that they signed on 1 or 2 year deals. And I'm like, I don't know if this guy's on there having a hot stretch, but it is. Bobby has been great since coming off the injured list. Cags was in a stretch of playing really good baseball, obviously in August, and then he gets hurt. We'll see, with the ankle, we'll see how he does. One Royal Way back at it here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Joel Penfield. Thank you all so much for tuning in and recording here on Wednesday night. The winning streak has come to an end with the Blue Jays beating the Royals 3-0 tonight. Not going to do a game recap of that. The game is what it is. All good things must come to an end, but it has been good to see this team playing the stretch of baseball that they have, winning 10 of 12, and going from a complete disaster to, hey, maybe there's something to build on over the next 2 months. This is not a playoff team. I'm not gonna go that far. I'm not gonna get hyperbolic with it. But it makes my job easier when this team is playing better. There's more to talk about as we move forward. Talk about some of those things with what we've seen over this stretch over the last week and a half or so, and then drill down a couple of topics. I want to talk Steven Cruz and Nate Pearson. What they've been able to do in the 8th, 9th inning for this team since Nate Pearson came over at the end of July. Salvador Perez, I think, deserves some shine with what he's done the last couple of months for this team. Obviously, setting the record, but I think there's a little more to it than that. Randy Dobnak, who threw the ball pretty well tonight, gave him 6 of 3-run ball, the 3-run homer, but still a sub-2 ERA in 50-some-odd innings since coming over to Kansas City. Then Vinnie. I'm going to talk about him as well since he's come off the injured list. We'll do all that here in just a moment. Before we do, please be sure to like the video if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're on the audio side, leave us a 5-star review and hit notification bells on all platforms, and make sure you're subscribed on audio and video side as well. We really appreciate that. It helps this channel grow, helps more people see this show. And as always, we're brought to you by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. Our partners Impossible here at Kansas City Sports Network. We can't thank them enough for their support over the last couple of years and to the last 5 years here at KCSN. So the win streak comes to an end. 1-10 of 12 coming off a perfect homestand as we outlined on Sunday after the win against the Tigers. And won the first game in Toronto, and then it comes to an end tonight. They've gotten themselves back into a position where, they're, I think, 13 games under 500 now, if I have that, if memory serves, 14 games, 15, regardless. They're still way under. They're not mathematically eliminated because of the hilarity of how terrible the American League is. I think they're 7.5, 8.5 out of a wild card spot right now at 15 games under 500, and still in the cellar of the American League the American League Central by 4.5 games. But the leader of the AL West right now is the Astros at 66 and 66. This has just been a horrific year for this league, and it really feels like it's whoever's going to play the Brewers, whoever's going to play the Dodgers in the World Series. I think one of those two teams, you're basically just playing for second place is kind of how it feels. That's an aside to what we're seeing. But I understand that the crux of the conversation about this is, as I said, happy to see them playing well because it makes it easier to talk about. When there's loss after loss after loss after loss, it's frustrating. It's frustrating on all of us. But the flip side of that is now that they're winning, it's frustrating because this is what I harped on the first couple of months when they were grossly underachieving to what we thought they could be at the beginning of the year. What we kind of realized what this season was going to be in those first 6 to 8 weeks is this is the team that's been in there the whole time, right? This is more in line with what I thought this team could be at the beginning of the year. Now, obviously, I didn't think that Reagans and Bubic were going to be out for the year or traded, and dealing with all of these injuries on the pitching side, and to be so touch and go with the bullpen and all that. But I thought at least the offense was going to be able to figure itself out. And for the most part, it's been really good. Tonight, notwithstanding, they have played really well for this stretch. And graded on a curve to some degree, playing the A's and playing the Angels. I get it. The Tigers are a better team than those two, but not much. They look like they kind of rolled over and died on Saturday. And they show a little bit of life, but I mean, their pitching staff still gave up, what was it, 11 runs to the Royals on Sunday. And this team has shown some fight, right? I think that was the thing that at the beginning of the year, it felt like they would just be deflated in the final innings down a couple of runs, or they had the lead and they couldn't hold it. And there was just this inability to counterpunch when a team fought back in the late innings. During this, we have seen this team, they walked off the A's, they stayed with it. They were down at some time. The first 6 innings kind of mired in some inconsistency on offense, and then they just found a way to win. They found a way to win. They put up crooked numbers. They did it against the Tigers, and they did it against the Blue Jays last night, getting a run late, and then ended up being the difference. You know, 2-run score on the final play of the game where Collins throws a runner out at second. Great play there, because who knows what happens after that. But there was this relentlessness that we saw that looked more in line with what we saw in 2024. That team would not die. Right? You never felt like they were truly out of it in a lot of games, especially when it was close late. You felt like they're going to find a way. And they did in a lot of cases. And they did it, and we saw a spurt of it from this team this year, which means it's in there. And for the most part, this team is largely built out of the group that made the playoffs in 2024. A lot of those young core position players outside of Carter and Kaggs were a part of that playoff run or have playoff experience. In Isaac Collins' case, playing for the Brewers last year, where they made it to the NLCS. So it's in there for this group. Not going to happen this year. But this is where I do think there is some credence, and I know people don't want to hear this because they're tired of the front office and the coaching staff, whatever. This lends some credence to their belief that this team can be competitive in 2027. That does not, now, not by me saying that does not mean set it and forget it. This roster can make it for next year. No, there are still things they have to fix. There are still things they have to add in order to get this team over the hump. But I think you see a group on offense with Carter and Bobby and Jack and Vinny now hitting the way he is. Massey really coming on. I know he's out right now with the head injury. Hopefully he's okay and is able to come back soon. But you have that group. You add in Michael, hopefully healthy for a full season. Waka and Lugo, they're, veterans. You know what you're going to get from Waka. You're praying Lugo doesn't fall off a cliff. You have some pieces in the bullpen, as I'm going to talk about later, that you feel like can handle some high leverage for you in the back end. You feel good about a lot of different pieces for this team. At least you should, in my opinion. And then it's a matter of how do they fill out the rest of this roster to make it competitive. But the core of the group that is there right now is going to be around next year. Not a ton of expiring contracts. There's going to be some shuffling in the bottom of the roster, that they're going to have to make, but teams do that every year. They shuffle those 11th, 12th, 13th position players and the, final 3 guys in the bullpen. Those get shuffled out year over year. So we're going to see some of that. But the guys that are producing, the guys that are a huge part of this, are guys that are going to be here next year. And we're seeing them kind of come together. The flip side of this could be they're playing free and easy because they know they're out of it. Or whether they want to admit it or not, they're out of it. It's probably the better way to put that. And that is legitimate. right? They talked about how they're just playing free and easy now. Easy to do that when you're 15 games under 500. What do you have to lose? Go out there and have fun, right? It's still got to pay your bills. It's still got to, these are their livelihoods. These are their jobs. These are at bats that are important for them as they go forward because you don't want to give away at bats. I'd be way more concerned if this team did what a lot of teams do in this particular stretch of the year, where it's just you can kind of tell the body language there's kind of mailed in, and they're planning their vacations with their significant others for the first week of October when the season ends. You know what? I'm sure, sure those plans are being set, but they're not playing like it. And I think there's some credit to that because it would be very easy to just whatever. We see what NFL teams look like at the end of the year when they know they're out of it. We know what NBA teams look like when they know they're 30 games under. Who cares? But we'll see what this looks like. Again, I'm more worried about next year than I am this year at this point. I'm looking for the things that are a part of next season more than I am this current one. And it would be one thing if it were, guys that they signed on 1 or 2 year deals. And I'm like, I don't know if this guy's here and they're having a hot stretch, but it is. Bobby has been great since coming off the injured list. Cags was in a stretch of playing really good baseball, obviously in August, and then he gets hurt. We'll see, with the ankle, we'll see how he does. Carter looks like he's starting to rebound a little bit. Vinny, as we'll all talk about later, has been awesome since coming off the injured list. It's guys that are part of this group. And you hope that they're going momentum season to season doesn't always exist. Case in point, make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, be even worse, right? But you're hoping that they can, see this production, see what this team is capable of over this last 2 months. And hey, listen, we finished 74 and 88. We should have been way better. If our and they won't say this, I'm saying this as part of this conversation. Like if the bullpen wasn't a disaster for the first 3 months of the season, we're in a much better spot. If Reagans and Bubich and Avila and Kolick didn't all get, and Reagan and Berger and all these guys didn't get hurt, we're in a much better position. That's a lot of ifs and a lot of whataboutism, but that's how those teams feel because the margins are so thin in professional baseball. I'm hopeful that should a season be played, this team is going to be able to rebound. I feel pretty good that they can, but it's just a matter of can they actually go out and do it? Because I thought the last 3 years this was a playoff core, and they made the playoffs. Or I didn't think they were a playoff team in 24. They turned into one, but I thought in 2025 they were going to be able to continue that because so much of the team was back, and they fell short. And then so much of it's copy pasted to 26 for the most part. You think they're going to be able to do it, and they fall on their face. And the season is what it is now. It's great to see them playing good baseball, but the too little too late aspect of it is frustrating. I recognize that, and I'm sure those guys feel the same way. And they've said this is way better than what we were doing first 3 months of the year. Like, yeah, no kidding. It's nice to win. Winning games is infectious. Winning breeds confidence. And this team is playing with that right now. I hope that they can keep it up, at least give us something to root for this last month of the year, not totally check out with football season really starting up this weekend. So a lot on the plate there, and we hope that, as we go forward, we see the vision for next season and see, okay, truly how many roster spots need to get filled. Because that's more what I'm looking at right now. What truly needs to get done from 1 through 26 to move forward with this team going into next year. Let's take a quick break, come back, talk about Nate Pearson and Steven Cruz, what they've been able to do in the back end of the bullpen right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
David Starnes Allstate Insurance is a proud partner of KC Sports Network, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. If you are looking for new coverage or something that better suits your home, auto, health, or any of your other insurance needs, give Dave and his team a call. Elevate your coverage and be worry-free with David Starnes Allstate Insurance.
You know that moment, the one when you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car or at the gas station 3 states away. Well, I've been there too. But then I found Shady Rays and it changed the game. These sunglasses are made for real life. Seriously good-looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. And here's the wild part. If you lose them or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So now I actually wear my sunglasses without fear. On hikes, at concerts, on the boat, wherever. They have sunglasses for golfing, fishing, hiking, and biking, even sunglasses for kids. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. Go to shadyrays.com and use code KCSN50 for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Another reason why this team has been able to play better baseball post All-Star break and really obviously during this streak is it makes Matt Quatrero's job a heck of a lot easier that when that bullpen door swings open, the dudes that he calls on actually do their job. They get outs. They throw up a 0, they limit damage and get out of the inning and then throw it to the next guy and the bullpen door swings open again. That guy gets the job done. You know, it's easy to, again, that's why part of why I don't really quibble with bullpen decisions because oftentimes it's a game of roulette when that bullpen door swings open as to what you're getting that day. And especially with this bullpen, like there's not a lot of good options for most of the season between injuries and ineffectiveness and regression and decline and whatever else. There wasn't many good options, and Matt Quatrero had to go with what matchups he had to go with. And that included a regressing Lucas Ursig, who's in Omaha now, a Matt Strom, who had nothing left and was DFA'd, and in the case of the second game of the year, Carlos Estevez, who was thrown 87. Like, there was just not a lot of good situations for the bullpen. And so when you're having to make those decisions, it reflects worse when those guys don't do their job, but those are the only guys able to do the job. It's a really tricky spot. And again, why I don't mess with making those decisions half the time, or like getting upset about making those decisions half the time when you just look at the bullpen on its face. That's not a huge problem. But during this stretch, and really dating back to when Nate Pearson made his team debut, they figured some stuff out at the back end of the bullpen. And some of this also coincides with Steven Cruz moving into an 8th, 9th inning role. And what I like about what those two together have been able to accomplish is one can handle the 8th, one can handle the 9th. And then the next day it flips. And just based on the matchups or however they feel comfortable with it, they've kind of been a closer tandem in a way. It's not clearly defined that the 8th is Pearson and the 9th is Cruz or vice versa. It really just depends on what they're seeing and what they are trying to accomplish with it. And it has made a massive difference with what these guys have been able to do. Now, Cruz has had a couple of rough outings in the last week. During this stretch, he gave up the 2-run homer on it would have been last Monday, maybe Monday or Tuesday in the game against the A's, or looking at the 19th. So that would have been Wednesday when they had like the crazy comeback game. And he gave up a home run on that stretch in 2 earned runs, but still was able to get out of the inning. And then he gave up 2 in the game in Toronto last night, non-save, but Collins kind of bailed him out because who knows what happens after, if Lucas is safe at second after that occurs. But what I've liked from him is that the strikeouts are there. And for both of these guys, really, and Pearson, I mean, relievers work in small samples to begin with, so we're really dealing with a small sample. But since coming over to Kansas City in 13 and 2/3 innings, it's a .66 CRA. He's given up 1 run. It was the game in Anaheim, or I think it was a 1. I think the game ended 1-0 or 2-1. But that's it. That's the only run that he's given up. And since that outing, so on the homestand plus the outing last night in Toronto, he's only allowed 3 hits in 5 innings and no runs, and he's got a strikeout, near a strikeout per inning during that stretch. He's starting to figure it out for this team, and a guy that, a bit of a post-hype top prospect, was a starter, now has become a reliever, but I think that they figured some stuff out with him, I think potentially, and he has another year of club control, which is massive. Cruz the thing with Cruz to kind of bounce back and forth between the two, the thing Cruz has to figure out is the home run stuff, because that has been wild this year, and just the shift from what we had seen at the beginning of his career to what it is now. In the first 60 some odd innings, 62, 63 innings between 2023 and 2025, he gave up 6 home runs. This year in 50 and 2/3, he's given up 12. Now, he's also struck out 54. So when you're looking at like what Matt Strahm was doing, who was not really striking out anyone, walking too many guys, and giving up homers, at least with Cruz, he's giving you some strikeouts. And when you throw the kind of, it's interesting because it does work this way sometimes with guys. Like if you throw a verti fastball, and what I mean by that is a fastball that kind of has some ride to it at the top of the zone. When it's there and you're able to get it kind of above the hands, then you're good. But if you let that thing, you throw it and it stays straight and flat down and it doesn't get that same ride, it's just on a tee. So it really is location based. But you look at a guy like Justin Verlander does it a little differently because he came like way over the top. Brian Wu may be a little bit of a better example, or Joe Ryan, who throw from like that lower slot, kind of like Steven Cruz does, where the ball, because of the vertical approach angle, which is just the arm slot, where that ball comes out, if it's flat, like if it doesn't get the ride that he needs, then it's just right there for the hitter. But that's where the cutter and the slider have been effective for him, and the cutter has been a huge game changer for him since moving into this role to get him off just fastball slider. It's that nice kind of median between the two, 98 to 100. The cutter's 94 to 96, and he's got the slider in the low 90s. So he's got 3 different ways, and the cutter gets into lefties, which makes it that's kind of the equalizer there against left-handed pitching. And he has the fastball; he can run it in, a little bit of arm side run to the to righty. So he has been effective, and a guy that I think is starting to grow into this role. I don't think he's a closer necessarily as we go forward, but a guy that can and is capable, and Pearson potentially could be, but those two guys, you feel like, as I mentioned in the beginning, how many roster spots does this team need to fill next year? I think if you have those two guys specifically, those guys can handle high leverage innings for you. And that makes the job of the front office and the coaching staff a heck of a lot easier to know, hey, we have guys that can handle the 9th inning. We have guys that, can come in the 7th, 8th inning of a 1-run game and you feel like they're going to get the job done. Like that is so important when you're thinking about building out the bullpen. The problem with the 2024 bullpen at the beginning of the year was they tried to build the high they had some guys that could handle some medium-ish leverage. Like they traded for Schreiber. They traded for, they had Zerpa. They had a few guys, but none of those guys were like 1-run game high leverage. They tried to build that with Chris Stratton and Will Smith, and it blew up spectacularly, and they had to reshuffle some stuff. But if you have the core piece of like what they had with Lucas Ursig last year and Angel Zerpa to some degree, they had guys that they knew they can handle high leverage. They needed a 9th inning guy. They went and got Estevez, and that bullpen was good last year. you felt like you had that coming into the year, and that blew up, and they've had to reshuffle. So a bit of like a reverse 2024 away, but they've been able to build it back and have these two guys, and it's a big reason why they won a lot of these games. The underrated part of this winning streak and this stretch they've been on, a lot of close games. Like, they have not really blown the doors off of anyone. It's been late and close in a lot of situations, and they've needed Nate Pearson and Steven Cruz to go and handle. It's a 1-run game in the ninth. It's a 2-run game in the eighth. Whatever the case. And we need you to keep it where it is so we can go win this game. And they've been able to do it. So I give them a lot of credit, and I give JJ some credit for going out and getting a guy like Pearson. You give away a high A reliever, and you're in a good spot, at least for next year, knowing that you can have those two guys and then see what else you can build out, beyond that. So we haven't really talked about Salvador Perez much over the last couple of weeks, whatever the case. And a lot of it is just because I think I kind of resigned myself to. I just wanted to see him get the record, and anything else he get is gravy. Because he had been so poor, for the first couple of months of the season. It looked like a guy that was just at the end, right? Is he even going to get to the record? Like, who knows? We're even going to get to that spot. And to his credit, for the last couple of months, he's actually been pretty darn good. Especially for a guy that's 36 with the amount of mileage on him, right? He stole a shoot, he stole a base on Sunday. That was awesome to see. But I did think it was interesting. So since July 1st, because this is kind of when that stretch, and I know that arbitrary endpoints, people have their opinions on them, but I did think this was interesting. Since July 1st, which is 177 plate appearances, that was coming into tonight as well, so it doesn't count tonight. He's hitting 266, 320 on base, 468 slugging, a 114 weighted runs created plus. That is, I think, 7 homers during this stretch of 2 months as well. Strikeout rate down to 18%. This coincides with, since July 1st, he has caught 6 games out of 44. And he did not catch tonight. Predominantly DH, occasional first base, but that's really what it's been, as Carter has taken on essentially the entirety of the catching duty, save Luke Maile once or twice a week. And Salvi has now moved really into first base, DH. DH mostly with a game or two at first if they need it. He has not caught since August 12th. That was when the right elbow nerve thing flared up for him. And I imagine that might be the last time we see him catch. Maybe he catches a little bit, as the season goes forward. But for the most part, I think they're pretty well set with Carter and Maile. Maybe they bring up a third catcher when rosters expand, like a Luka Trash or something like that, and continue it that way. But this is kind of what I wanted to see most of the year, right? Like, I didn't know how much Salvi was going to be able to catch. I didn't think Salvi should catch that much, right? You don't see, especially with how big he is, right? He's been it's an unorthodox build for a catcher for most of his career. And to be 36, and he's got the hip and the ankle and the shoulder and the elbows, there's just all sorts of stuff. And playing through it, and that guy would play through anything, just about. He just wants to play baseball, and I love that mentality. This is now where I wonder, okay, maybe the organization sees this, and they see, okay, he's not catching really much right now. And the offense has come back to some degree, even if it's, it's not what he once was, but still productive. It maybe makes it a touch more palatable for him to come back in 2027, and you feel like you can legitimately play him most days. I've talked about it. Like, I don't think he needs to be an everyday player next year. Make him a DH. Most starts come against lefties. He's your first guy off the bench against left-handed pitching in most cases. First base, DH. Let him catch opening day. Let him catch the final regular season game. Let him have that moment, right? But other than that, I don't think that needs to be what they do. And it is going to be interesting to see how they handle next year. Do they sign? I would sign a backup catcher, a legitimate one. Like Luke Maile is fine, but I would go and try and get a little bit of a better one, maybe, if you could. I'll see what kind of guys are out there as I'm looking at this, but it is going to be really interesting to see what they handle. Well, like, you got Ryan Jeffers an unrestricted free agent, but I think that's probably a little too high. Like a Jonah Heim, what Christian back is, Austin Hedges, right, would be a great example of bringing a guy in that's a great defensive catcher that Carter can learn from, and you really then do not have to catch Salvador Perez. And that's your group, right? That might be the way that they handle it. Or that's the way I think they should handle it, might be the better way for me to describe that. But I'm happy to see Salvy's playing well right now. And Salvy's playing well, the team tends to do well. When he has a moment like he did on Sunday, stealing a base, they talked about it. Like, that fired him up. And I'm sure to see their captain playing well and not mired in a sub 600 OPS like he was for the first couple of months of the season when he looked cooked. If nothing else, it's just going to be a story to watch the rest of the year. Like, how much can he extend this home run streak, or the home run record, right? He's at 320 now. Can he get it to 325 by the end of the year? 327? And then if he comes back next year, he's really going to be able to extend it, get it to 340 or beyond. So hopefully this is not really just like the swan song for Salvy. And if they do bring him back, I think it needs to be in the capacity of DH first base and play it out that way. Because what he's done right now, the numbers reflect out. Since he's really stopped catching predominantly, the offense has ticked up. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I talked about it a little bit from the the little bit that I talked about tonight's game with Randy Dobnak. Tonight it was 6 innings of 3-run ball, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. The ERA is 1.92 on the year. Now the FIP is 3.74, and a lot of that is due to the walks. So he's got 21 walks and 51 and 2/3, and he's only 34 strikeouts in that. So he's not a strikeout guy. But it is interesting, and I would not have ever even thought this a possibility when on April 1st or whatever, when the season started. Like, Randy Dobnak's going to be important for this team in August. Wait, what? But since he's come over in July, like, he's done what they've asked of him. And really, he hasn't had, like one start where he kind of blew up. But other than that, he's been pretty good. And for what they've asked of him, to be, pitch to contact, get out of this thing as efficiently as you can, get us through 6 if you can, 5 and diamond if you have to, and let's turn it over and not get blown up. And he's done that. I am actually now beginning to wonder, to some degree, because he's arbitration eligible, because of his service time. He's only got 3 years of service, technically, even though it's been parts of 6 seasons in the big leagues. We're already nearing, he's actually set his career high in big league innings this year now. Because the previous high was 50 and 2/3. He's got 51 and 2/3 after tonight. Does Randy Dobnak have a role in this team in 2027? Again, not something I thought was possible. But I wouldn't hate it. Now, I don't think he can be your 5th starter. I don't think you can go into next season with him as your 4th or your 5th starter and expect to compete. But if you ask Randy Dobnak, who's still got minor league options, hey, we think there's something here with you. I think, what Brian Sweeney and you have been able to accomplish. I think there's something here. Go hang out in Omaha for a couple of weeks, and then you're our first call. He can be that guy. He could be what they hoped Bailey Falter could be, what they hoped Mason Black could be in this bullpen, your true long relief type guy, the multi-inning, 3-inning type guy, and maybe the fastball ticks up to 93, 94 in that instance instead of it being mostly 90 to 92. And he would just be a ground ball guy, save the bullpen, say Noah Cameron gets blown up one day or Lugo gets blown up. Hey, we need you to cover innings 4 and 5 for us. He can do that. Or shoot, pick a pitcher, didn't get out of the third. Like, go cover it. Can you cover the rest of the third, fourth, and fifth for us? And he probably could do that. In a, clearly defined spot start, mostly long relief role, I think he could be pretty good for this team. Obviously, he's not going to be a 1.9 ERA guy. Like that, you can't expect that. Especially with the FIP and the expected stuff. Like, he's pitch to contact guys are always really hurt by those metrics because it really, takes because the batted ball data takes so much into account, which I'm glad. Because if I saw Randy Dobnak at a 1.9 ERA, like, he might get Cy Young votes in 1977, but we have the ability to see. He's getting kind of barreled up all over the place. Man, he's getting kind of lucky that the defense is awesome behind him. Nick, you have those types of games where it's just smoke and mirrors, but clearly the smoke and mirrors are working because it's another game where he gives you a quality start of 6 innings and 3-run ball. The offense did more tonight. Maybe we're talking about him in line for a win. Didn't work out that way. But this is, I think, something that's intriguing and something I certainly did not believe was possible when we were looking at, when they signed Randy Dobnak, when he comes over from Seattle, it's like, okay, cool. But he's done a job, and he's done a pretty good job of it for a team that desperately needed innings because of all the injuries and desperately needed a guy that's going to keep them in ball games. And he's done that. So I think this might be a guy you reward. He's going to be 32 next year. Hey, let's bring you back and let's figure out a way to, that you can help this roster. And I think he probably could in some capacity for next year. Lastly, do want to talk about Vinny. Talked about it a little bit on Sunday as well. But he has really turned things around since coming off of the injured list. And this is going to be more small sample size theater. And I recognize that because so much of his June and his July were mired in being hurt. But since coming off of the injured list on August 17th for the series against the A's, he's hitting 379 with a 724 slug. And he has not struck out during this stretch. And I'm going to pull up tonight's box score just to make sure that has not, that didn't happen tonight as well. Watch the whole thing, but I do not recall that happening for him either. No strikeouts tonight either. And now that, to be fair, he went over 4 tonight. So that 379, again, that was coming into tonight. The power coming back is what's been interesting. Because when you have a hamate injury and then the hand still, being sore and dealing with that, oftentimes that's, the thing that does not come back for guys is the power. Like, that's what's kind of zapped. Like, yeah, you can hit. Yeah, you're going to drive balls into the gaps, but you're going to have a hard time elevating the ball and hitting it hard off the barrel to, provide the outcome for a home run. But he hit 2 home runs at both bombs, not cheapies at all. And he's hit a couple of doubles, one to left center that nearly got out, which would have been his first non-pulled home run of his career. And then he hit a long single in that crazy comeback game against the A's that was nearly a home run, but just banged off the very, very, very top of the wall near the bullpen. It's like he very nearly could have 4 home runs and 2 doubles, but it's 2 homers and 4 doubles. He's 11 for 38 since coming off the IL. This is more in line with the guy that he has been in 2024 and in 2025, which tells me that I don't know how much of this season he was actually healthy, right? Like, who knows how long his hand had been bothering him before the hamate popped. And then when that happened, then he had to come back. And then the soreness that's dealt with the surgery, he came back pretty quick from that injury. And now I think we're seeing like, oh, he looks pretty healthy. Like you can tell in his swings, you can tell in his approach, he's not really fighting it as much anymore. And that's come with he's walking a good amount and he's not striking out. Like, he looks light and he's making a lot of contact. He's driving runners in. And he looks like the dude that he has been for the majority of his career. And when he is on the field, and what he was for essentially 2 full healthy seasons in 24 and 25. So it's why you don't give up on the guy. Like, I know Jack is the shiny new toy, and I get that he's great, and he's good, a really, really good player, and is turning into a really good player, but Vinny's pretty damn good too. And I still believe there's a world where they can coexist. That just because Jack is awesome now doesn't mean you have to write Vinny off or send him somewhere else. Like, I think there's still a world where this can work with those 2 guys in the lineup. It may be now that Jack is a 3-hitter and Vinny hits 5, but that's still a pretty darn good 5-hitter. And if Jack turns into the player that he's supposed to be, or that he can be still, I think there's still a lot for him to reach, more ceiling for him to reach, I should say, then that's a pretty formidable lineup and a pretty formidable 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll see how it all ends up. But I am still optimistic that Vinny's going to be able to get things figured out. And what he does over this last month, if he continues this, hits over 300 for another month, with the runners in scoring position stuff kind of coming back, looking more like the dude he was in 24. For the most part, he had a stretch of that in 25 as well. With the power maintaining, then I do think there is reason for optimism for what Vinny could be in 27 and what he can, get back to. You're hopeful that he can, and then obviously staying on the field is a big part of that. The hamate injury is not really anything you can control. It just happens, for guys. So there's a little bit of flukiness to that. But best ability is availability, and you got to show he's available. But when he is, he's a good player, and he is more. I firmly believe that he's more the player that we've seen last week plus than he is the guy that we saw that was pretty bad the first few months of the year. I think that's going to do it for this episode of One Royal Way. Appreciate you guys listening. And once again, please like, rate, subscribe, review on all platforms. Hit those notification bells. You guys are listening to this on Thursday morning. Thursday night, after the final out of Blue Jays Royals from Toronto, we will be live for the KCSN Live Royals post-game show. We're doing it on Thursday. Schedules weren't lining up for it to happen during the weekend, so we want to make sure we still got one for you guys. So come through and hang out then. Listen after the fact. Enjoy your weekend. But we appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk soon. Take care.